Speaking of ideas and mindset, I wanted to talk about mental health among creatives of color. Throughout season 2 of LLAG Radio, we've been talking to artists of color from all walks of life, and a resounding theme among a lot of these artists is the importance of having the right balance, both mentally and emotionally. And I think one of the hardest things to do for creatives is to get into the right headspace, because if you're in the right headspace, the ideas can come, and if the ideas are coming, then you can get into that flow. And it's just like it's difficult to get into that right frame of mind. As an artist, how are you affected by, and how do you manage your mental health in relation to your work?
So I it's a constant struggle. I go to therapy, and that like helps tremendously because my therapist helps me put everything like kind of in order, or in like, she helps me organize my thoughts and put myself with tricks into a certain mental space that I can function.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm diagnosed major depressive disorder, and it in university I attempted to take my own life. So like mental health for me is like it's really important. It's like one of those topics I feel like has to be discussed more with people in general, and especially within like with creatives of color, because it's just one, not something that we talk about in general as communities of color,
Mm-hmm.
but two, it's just like artists are still seen as like kind of like almost like fairies, like we don't exist, or we like kind of like
Mm-hmm.
mythical creatures, kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, what you do is just fun. It's just like, yeah, I enjoy it, but like, yo, this is my livelihood. This
Yeah,
is,
exactly.
so like it's figuring out that balance, and hope, and like thankfully rather, like therapy has helped a lot, teaching me how to be more mindful,
Mm-hmm.
and also being able to learning how to shut my like that part of my brain off.
Yeah.
Like I have to shut that off, because otherwise I have like a million things going through my mind at once,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing gets done because I'm just constantly thinking about what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So with like, going through therapy and being more mindful of just like, what's going on, putting myself, like making myself present, and let's like saying like, okay, here are all these ideas, have them listed out. I'll pick them out and then say like, and work on this. And if it goes through, great. If it doesn't go through, that's also great. Like I have to forgive myself, which was
Yeah.
a huge part. I'm still coming to terms with that. Like it got to the point where like I hated myself. I hated my creativity. Like I was just like, fuck art. It's a demon. I don't want this anymore. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want to think about this shit anymore. And then I just had to like take a step back and look. It's just like, that's not the truth. It's just you can't manage it now. You're having problems with that work-life balance or that art-life balance,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to like learn how to manage these things and put them in like a certain order of priorities. Just like, okay, I'll work X amount of hours, get this done, see if this pans out. If it doesn't, fine. It doesn't have to. Like there are always other projects.
Mm-hmm.
You can always do other work. Like turn that off and go about the rest of your day. Play video games, take your mind off of it, drink whiskey, not whiskey, and make sure it's good whiskey. Just chill, just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and I think it's like as an artist, like we just as artists, we tend to just get caught up in like minutia because we're
Mm-hmm.
so detail oriented
Mm-hmm.
that like we get caught up in the weeds of shit all the time.
Yeah.
It's just like, and it's so hard to pull yourself out of it. So
Uh-huh.
it's just,
Uh-huh.
it's like finding. So I would say like by finding balance in therapy, like if I wasn't going to therapy, I would say it would be way more difficult than like what it is now.
Therapy is one of the things that I've always advocated for it, but I've never sought it out myself. But when you're talking about art being connected to your livelihood and your mental health being connected to your art, it, like you said, so many people do treat artists as if we just have it. It's this thing that like when you or it kind of reminds me of when people talk to comedians. They're like, oh, you're a funny guy, make a joke. It's like, no, like I can't just like be artistic. Like I can't just there's I got to have the right music. I have to have
Right.
the right atmosphere, and like people don't get that. And I think what's hard is that, like, because there's so many jobs where it's like, and this isn't to disparage any other jobs or anything like that. It's just pointing out the differences. But it's like if you have like a job that is more physical, you don't have to sort of rely on like that insecurity that I have or this thing that's going on in my life, because one of the most nerve-wracking things is when you're on a job and you're on a deadline and you have to create something, but then your mind isn't working. It's not, you can't come up with shit, your ideas are shit, and you're just like, you start to really drown, and you're just like you said about this whole like fuck art, I hate this shit. Like, I know that feeling, because it's this back and forth thing where you're like, fuck this thing, I should have had just a normal job. I could have just done like just normal shit. Like like I would have like I should have just been like everybody else. Like I didn't have to do this thing. And you start to doubt yourself. You're like, was I lazy? Is it because like, I just didn't want to try and I just wanted to do this easy thing? But then you have an idea and then you execute something and you're like, fuck, man, like this is why I'm doing this shit.
Yeah.
But obviously getting to that place is really difficult. Aside from therapy, like what else has been really useful for you, like tangibly, whether it's like an app or whether it's like bullet journaling or whatever, or like meditation? Like what are some key things that you go back to either recenter yourself or to sort of remove those distractions?
I can't, like, I've tried meditation, I've tried different forms of meditation, and it just doesn't work for me. Like, it's just not my thing.
Can't turn off the thoughts. Yeah.
No. And like I've been told, well, it's just like, well, meditation's like this, it's not actually like that. I'm just like, it's all bullshit. It's not working. not saying meditation is bullshit, but for me, it just doesn't work. Yeah. So like, what I do is like, I seek community. Like, I got two like really good friends that I've grown up with, and like we don't connect often, but when we do, like we make the most of that connection. And like we usually like we'll hop on like the PS4 and like play video games. Like that for me is just like worth like 1,000 hours of therapy. It's just like playing with my old elementary school friends. Being outside also, like hiking, just being outside and like with nature and observing, and this might be completely esoteric, but like just observing how imperfect nature is and yet how it still manages to continue to exist. And like if you let nature slip, it'll take over like once again. So it's just like, just observing that and being surrounded by all the energy, like this natural energy, like just helps ease my brain, and it actually like allows me to filter ideas. It's like, oddly enough, it's just like I can think clearer after like just taking a walk in nature. And unfortunately, some people don't have that luxury of being like, close to nature. So like when I was living in New York, I didn't. So it's like gardening. I straight up like love like flowers and lay out beds, and like like last week I created beds for my wife to grow an herb garden, and it's just like there's something so satisfying about just like being in dirt and planting these things that look like one way when they're this big, and then like just watching them grow over time and like taking care of them and watering them and everything like that. Like that's tremendous for me.
It's funny because all three of those things I 100% connect with. One, I sometimes I feel bad how much I have to play games, but like I'm playing through BioShock, but my go-to game is Smash, and I've always been sort of like a fighting game person. But like you said, it's like being able to just play, and especially a game that you can really immerse yourself and just forget everything. Like especially if you have a good RPG, you can just grind for hours. But also nature is super, super important, because I actually really like what you said about the whole observations of things that are imperfect and just looking at nature and in a weird way accepting the fact that there are so many things in nature that are uncontrollable, but that's the way that things are. And I think that it sort of looking at that as a reflection of your own life and realizing that there are some things that you can control and some things that you can't, and just knowing the balance of which ones you can is really therapeutic. But yeah, I mean, it's just and to your last point, you know, sorry, what was your last point again? I'm blanked out for just a second. Gardening, yeah. So funny thing is, linked with video games, I was playing Stardew Valley for like a long time, then I got into like Animal Crossing shit, and then I started to really get into wanting to get into gardening, and so I actually bought like a bonsai tree, and I've been watching that grow for like the last 6 months. So it's like you're totally right about watching something grow and just knowing that slow progress really is gratifying than just quickly creating something and posting on social media and whatever. You know, it's like just the feeling of watching something over time, and you're like, man, these plants aren't growing, and then all of a sudden like a leaf comes out, oh shit, and you're just like, you're happy, you're like, you're geeked out, and it's just like it's really gratifying. It's
so fulfilling. Like just like see, last year when I was growing kung pao peppers, and I was like, oh shit, I think it died. It's dead. It's absolutely dead. And then like when the season actually took, because I winterized them, and I was like, I think I winterized them wrong. And so when like the season actually took, and it's like I saw that first pepper, I was just like, fuck yes. And so like there was like kung pao peppers in everything I was making. And I was just like, and that's a whole other thing too. It's just like taking what I garden and then being able to do other shit and with it. You know, stuff. like cooking with it or using it for like pigment or something like that. Like, oh, it's awesome. A dope feeling.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely want to get into gardening, so I might have to go ahead and hit you up about some tips.